Ben Davis sat in the 40th floor lobby of the Bush Group, his worn briefcase balanced on knees that wouldn't stay still. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, Manhattan sprawled below, a city of second chances he could no longer afford to chase. His daughter's voice played in his head from breakfast. "You've got this, Dad. I believe in you." At 17, Lily still looked at him like he had all the answers. What she didn't see were the eviction warnings, the medical bills stacked on their kitchen counter, or the fact that this interview was his final shot before everything collapsed.
Before we dive into Ben's incredible journey, I need your help with something. We're racing to hit 1,000 subscribers before this month ends, and we're so close. If stories like this touch your heart, hit that subscribe button right now. It takes 2 seconds and means the world to us here at Twister Stories. Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next in Ben's story. It's absolutely unbelievable. Thank you as you do so. Now let's get back to the story.
The past 14 months had stripped Ben down to nothing but survival mode. After Joanna's death and the layoff that followed 3 months later, he'd become a ghost of the man who once commanded conference rooms and closed six-figure deals. His advertising career had evaporated during a corporate merger, and getting back in had proven impossible. Recruiters saw the employment gap, the age creeping past 40, the desperation he couldn't quite hide, and they always chose someone younger, someone less complicated, someone who didn't carry the weight of the world in the lines around their eyes. But today felt different. The Bush Group needed a senior VP of strategic partnerships, and the job description read like someone had copied his old resume. He'd spent 2 weeks preparing, rehearsing answers in the mirror while Lily slept, researching Kate Bush until he knew her business philosophy by heart. This had to work. There was no plan B anymore. "Mr. Davis?" A woman emerged from the corridor, tall, immaculate, in a tailored trench coat, her hair pulled back with surgical precision. "I'm Kate Bush. Please follow me." Ben stood, his 10-year-old Brooks Brothers suit suddenly feeling tighter across the shoulders. Kate Bush. Not an HR manager, not a hiring director. The CEO herself. His heart kicked against his ribs as he followed her past minimalist art installations and glass-walled conference rooms that screamed money and power. The interview began smoothly. Ben spoke about integrated partnership strategies, about building authentic brand relationships in cynical markets. Kate listened with an intensity that was almost unnerving, her expression neutral, but her focus absolute. She asked sharp questions. He gave sharper answers. For 20 minutes, he allowed himself to believe this might actually happen. Then came the question he'd been dreading. "I see a significant gap in your recent work history. Can you walk me through that?" Ben's throat tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "My wife passed away from cancer about 14 months ago. I'm raising our 17-year-old daughter, and I needed to make sure she had stability during that transition. It took longer than I expected to get back on my feet." Kate's mask didn't crack, but something flickered in her eyes. "And your availability? This role requires irregular hours, occasional travel, evening events." "I'm fully committed," Ben said, which was both true and terrifying. "I have support systems in place." The support system was mostly Mrs. Higgins next door, a 73-year-old chain smoker who could barely climb her own stairs. But Kate didn't need those details. She was about to ask another question when Ben's phone buzzed against his leg. Then again, and again. He tried to ignore it, but the vibrations felt like alarm bells. "I apologize," he said, pulling out his cracked iPhone. "I just need to." 15 missed calls. His stomach dropped through the floor. The text from Mr. Arthur, Lily's guidance counselor, made the room tilt. Lily collapsed during practice. Ambulance taking her to New York Presbyterian ER. Come immediately. Ben stood so fast his chair scraped across the polished concrete. "I'm sorry. My daughter's been taken to the hospital. I have to go right now." Kate rose as well, her professional composure intact. "I understand. We'll be in touch." But Ben barely registered her words. He was already moving toward the door, his mind racing through calculations he couldn't afford to make. The hospital meant bills. Walking out meant losing the job. Losing the job meant losing the apartment. Losing the apartment meant failing Lily completely. But none of that mattered because Lily was hurt and she needed him, and he would always choose her, even if it meant losing absolutely everything else. He jabbed the elevator button like it might make the car arrive faster, his breath coming in short bursts. When the gold-accented doors finally opened, he lunged inside. The lobby was 40 floors below. Too slow. Everything was too slow. Wait. Mr. Davis, wait. Ben turned to see Kate Bush running down the corridor, her stilettos clicking against marble. Her controlled composure finally cracked. She was slightly breathless when she reached him, and she held out the resumes he'd left scattered on the conference table. "You forgot these," she said, pressing them into his shaking hands. Then she said something that made no sense. "Which hospital?" "New York Presbyterian, but I don't. My car's faster than whatever you're planning. Come on." Before Ben could process what was happening, Kate was striding toward the executive elevator, gesturing for him to follow. 2 minutes later, they were in her black Mercedes, cutting through midtown traffic with controlled aggression. Ben gripped the door handle, his mind unable to reconcile the CEO who'd been interviewing him with the woman now weaving between lanes like she had something to prove. "You don't have to do this," Ben said. "I already destroyed the interview." "You didn't destroy anything." Kate's eyes stayed locked on the road, her jaw set. "You showed me exactly what kind of man you are. Now tell me about Lily." And somehow, in that car racing toward the hospital, Ben found himself talking about Joanna's final months, about Lily's nightmares and her two bright smiles, about the impossible juggling act of being both parents to a kid who'd already lost too much, about the medical debt that never stopped growing and the rideshare shifts that barely kept them fed. Kate didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. She just listened, occasionally nodding, her hands steady on the wheel. They reached New York Presbyterian in what felt like seconds and hours simultaneously. Kate pulled up to the emergency entrance, her hazards flashing. "Go. I'll park and find you." Ben ran through the automatic doors, his heart slamming against his ribs. At the registration desk, he gasped out Lily's name, and a tired nurse pointed him toward Bay 12. He pushed through the curtain and found his daughter on a gurney, her arm in a temporary splint, her face pale but conscious. "Dad." Her voice cracked, and the brave mask she'd been wearing for him since her mother died finally shattered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The interview." "Stop." Ben wrapped her in his arms, careful of her injury, breathing in the coconut scent of her shampoo. "Don't you dare apologize. You're all that matters. You hear me? You're everything." The doctor came through moments later, a young resident with tired eyes who explained that Lily had fractured her ulna during a collision on the soccer field. She'd need a cast, follow-up appointments, possibly physical therapy. As the doctor listed treatment plans, Ben felt the familiar panic rising in his chest like floodwater. The bills. How would he pay for any of this? But then Kate Bush appeared in the doorway, and Lily's eyes went wide. "Is that your boss?" Lily whispered, staring at Kate's impeccable suit like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Kate smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face, and approached the bed slowly. "Hi, Lily. I'm Kate, a friend of your dad's. That's quite a collision you had. You play center mid." For the next hour, while doctor set Lily's arm and wrapped it in a bright purple cast at her insistent request, Kate stayed. She told stories about breaking her own wrist playing high school basketball, made Lily laugh with terrible soccer puns, and somehow made the sterile ER feel less terrifying. Ben watched in stunned silence as this woman, who should have been back in her tower conducting interviews, sat on a plastic chair holding his daughter's good hand. When the discharge paperwork arrived, Kate quietly intercepted it. She spoke in low tones with the billing coordinator, then turned back to Ben. The company has comprehensive health coverage. Consider this part of your benefits package. I don't have the job, Ben said, his voice hollow. Kate met his eyes with an expression he couldn't read. Yes, you do. If you still want it. Ben couldn't find words. Lily, however, had no such problem. Dad, you got the job. I told you. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep in the car on the ride home, exhausted from pain medication and adrenaline crash, Kate helped Ben carry her up 3 flights to their Astoria walk-up. She didn't comment on the peeling wallpaper or the second-hand furniture that filled their cramped apartment. She simply helped him ease Lily onto her bed, pulling the blanket up with movements that suggested practice. In the small kitchen, Kate wrote down information: her direct number, HR contact details, a start date 3 weeks out. Then she paused, and the CEO mask fell away entirely. 15 years ago, I was you, she said quietly. Single mother, drowning in bills, terrified I'd lose everything. I was living in a trailer park in Ohio, putting myself through business school at night while my daughter slept in the back of classrooms. Someone gave me a chance when my resume was a disaster. They looked past the paper and saw the person. She held his gaze. You ran out of that interview without a second thought because your daughter needed you. That told me everything I needed to know about your character, your priorities, and how you lead when it counts. Those are things I can't teach, Ben. The rest is just details. Ben's eyes burned with tears he'd held back for months. Thank you. You have no idea. Actually, I do. Kate's smile was sad and knowing. Welcome to the Bush Group. We're going to do good work together. After she left, Ben stood in Lily's doorway, watching his daughter sleep despite the purple cast on her arm. For the first time in 14 months, something unfamiliar bloomed in his chest, not the desperate, clawing hope he'd been surviving on, but something solid, something real. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything, how one emergency could have toppled the careful house of cards he'd been building. But instead, he'd found something unexpected. Proof that humanity still existed in glass towers, that compassion could come from the most unlikely sources, and that sometimes being a good father was the most important qualification of all. The next morning, Lily woke up insisting they call Kate to say thank you. As Ben dialed, his daughter bouncing beside him with her casted arm held high like a trophy, he realized this story wasn't really about him. It was about the ripple effect of grace, about how one person's choice to see beyond the surface could change 2 lives completely. Kate had run after him not because she needed to fill a position, but because she remembered what it felt like to drown. And now Ben would carry that forward, working not just for a paycheck, but to honor the faith she'd placed in him. And someday, when he had the power to help someone else, he would remember this moment. As Lily showed Kate her purple cast through video call, both of them laughing, Ben looked out at the city below. It was the same view as yesterday, but everything looked different now. The opportunities didn't seem quite so far out of reach anymore. The weight on his shoulders had lifted, replaced by something that felt suspiciously like a future. Sometimes people show up exactly when you need them. Sometimes humanity appears in a CEO who runs after you, who drives you to the hospital, who sees your heart before your credentials. And sometimes the moment you think you've lost everything becomes the doorway to something better than you imagined possible. Ben Davis had walked out of that interview believing he'd failed. Instead, he'd found something far more valuable, proof that goodness still existed, that people still saw each other, and that one act of compassion could change everything.
Ben walked out of that interview thinking he'd lost everything. Instead, he found hope. If this story moved you, help us share more stories like it. Twister Stories needs to hit 1,000 subscribers before the month ends. We're so close, and your subscription matters. Click that button below, turn on notifications, and become part of this journey. Comment subscribed so I know you're with us, and I'll see you in the next incredible story. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the moment you think you failed is the moment everything changes. Thanks for your unconditional support in every story. Blessings to you and your family.